The 1950s were Britain's last great decade of coach-built glamour. Rationing had barely ended, steel was still tightly controlled by the government, and yet out of Coventry, Crewe and Newport Pagnell rolled some of the most extravagant, most expensive and most beautifully engineered cars the world had ever seen. While the average Briton was driving a Morris Minor or an Austin A30 for a few £100s, a tiny elite of dukes, industrialists, racing drivers and Hollywood stars were writing checks for cars that cost more than most people's houses. Today many of these same cars sell at auction for tens of millions of pounds, a jaw-dropping testament to how far ahead of their time they were. This countdown looks at 10 of the most expensive British cars of the 1950s, ranked by a combination of their original eye-watering price tags and the almost unbelievable sums they command from collectors now. Buckle up. This is a journey through walnut dashboards, supercharged straight sixes, and price tags that will genuinely make your jaw drop. Daimler DK400 Empress line. Daimler occupied a strange and wonderful place in 1950s British motoring, a mark that had, for decades, supplied cars to the royal family, and which continued to build enormous, imposing limousines for heads of state and captains of industry throughout the decade. The DK400, built on Daimler's Empress Regina chassis, was among the largest and most expensive cars sold in Britain during the era. Priced at well over £4,000 when new, comparable to a very good house in the suburbs of London, the DK400 used a 4.6-litre straight-six engine mated to Daimler's distinctive fluid flywheel and pre-selector gearbox, a transmission system that allowed for astonishingly smooth gear changes without a conventional clutch pedal in daily use. The car's proportions were vast, nearly 6 meters long in some limousine configurations, with the division window separating chauffeur from passengers, exactly as its wealthy clientele demanded. What made the DK400 so expensive wasn't just its size, but its craftsmanship. Daimler's coach builders at Hooper produced bodies with hand-beaten aluminum panels, full leather in the front and often West of England cloth in the rear compartment, and burr walnut veneer polished to a mirror shine. Some examples were built specifically for export to oil-rich nations in the Middle East, where the car's imposing road presence and near-silent ride made it the ultimate status symbol. Surviving examples are rare today since so many were used hard in ceremonial or diplomatic service, but the handful that appear at auction can command anywhere from £80,000 to over £200,000, depending on provenance, considerably more if the car has a documented history of royal or state use. Bentley S1 Continental. If the Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud was the ultimate in silent luxury, its sister car, the Bentley S1 Continental, was the driver's alternative, and in period it was, if anything, even more exclusive and expensive. Introduced in 1955, the S1 Continental was built in far smaller numbers than the regular Bentley S1 saloon, with lightweight aluminum bodywork designed to shave off weight and sharpen performance. A Bentley Continental in the mid-1950s could cost upward of £6,000 to £7,000, depending on coach builder and specification, a figure that placed it firmly among the most expensive production cars sold anywhere in the world at the time, let alone in Britain. Bodies were supplied by coach builders including H.J. Mulliner, whose flowing fastback design became instantly iconic, offering a top speed close to 120 mph in period road tests, remarkable for a car of its size and weight in the 1950s. The Continental's 4.9-liter inline-six, fitted with high-compression cylinder heads and a more aggressive camshaft than the standard Bentley, gave it genuine grand touring performance, allowing owners to cross Europe at sustained high speed in complete comfort. It was, in essence, the fastest, most expensive four-seat car Britain produced during the entire decade. Today, original H.J. Mulliner-bodied Continentals are among the most sought-after Bentleys of any era, regularly selling for £300,000 to £600,000, with exceptional matching numbers examples occasionally surpassing £1 million at auction. Few cars better capture the marriage of British luxury and genuine performance than the S1 Continental. Jaguar XKSS. Few cars encapsulate priceless quite as literally as the Jaguar XKSS. Built in 1957 as a road-legal version of the all-conquering D-Type racing car, the XKSS was never intended to be affordable. It was created specifically to allow Jaguar's most dedicated and wealthiest customers to own something close to a genuine Le Mans winner for use on public roads. Only 25 examples were ever completed, and that number would have been higher had a catastrophic fire at Jaguar's Browns Lane factory in February 1957 not destroyed the remaining unfinished chassis. That combination of racing pedigree and near-mythical rarity meant the XKSS commanded extraordinary prices even in period, and it has only grown more valuable in the decades since. Early owners in America, including a young Steve McQueen who reportedly outran police on the roads outside Los Angeles in his XKSS, helped cement its legendary status. Mechanically, the XKSS retained the D-Type's 3.4L straight-six engine, producing around 250 brake horsepower wrapped in the same aerodynamic aluminum body that had proven itself at the Circuit de la Sarthe, but softened slightly for road use with a proper windscreen, folding roof, and creature comforts like actual bumpers and a passenger door. Given how few survive and how many of those remaining are held in serious private collections or museums, genuine XKSS examples rarely appear at public auction at all. When they have, prices have reached well beyond £10 million, and privately negotiated sales are rumored to have gone considerably higher still, making the XKSS one of the single most valuable British road cars of the entire 20th century. Aston Martin DB3S. The Aston Martin DB3S occupies a fascinating middle ground between road car and out-and-out racer, and it's precisely that duality that has made it so expensive both in period and today. Developed in the early 1950s as a lighter, more agile evolution of the earlier DB3, the DB3S was raced by Aston Martin's works team at Le Mans, Goodwood, and countless other circuits throughout the decade, driven by legendary names including Stirling Moss, Peter Collins, and Tony Brooks. Only a handful of DB3S cars were built, split between works racing examples and a small number of customer cars sold to wealthy private owners who wanted to go wheel-to-wheel with the factory team. Even in the 1950s, acquiring one required not just enormous wealth, but also the right connections within Aston Martin's small, close-knit racing department. These were not cars you simply walked into a showroom and bought. Power came from a 2.9L straight-six producing around 210 brake horsepower, mounted in a lightweight tubular chassis clothed in a strikingly curvaceous aluminum body designed with input from Aston Martin's chief engineer, giving the DB3S exceptional handling for the era at the cost of a ride that was firm even by 1950 sports car standards. Today, surviving DB3S examples, particularly those with genuine period racing history, are among the most valuable Aston Martins in existence, with recent auction results placing well-documented cars in the £5 million to £10 million range. Given how few remain and how tightly held they are among serious collectors, the DB3S has become almost as much an investment vehicle as a driving one. Bentley Continental R-Type. Before the S1 Continental came its predecessor, the Bentley Continental R-Type, launched in 1952 and widely regarded as the fastest four-seat production car in the world at the time of its launch. It was, in every sense, the ultimate expression of post-war British engineering ambition. A car built to prove that Bentley could still produce something genuinely world-beating even amid the austerity of the early 1950s. The R-Type Continental's price when new was extraordinary for the period, comfortably over £6,000 with coachwork at a time when a typical family car cost a fraction of that. Its lightweight aluminum body, styled in-house at Bentley but built by H.J. Mulliner, was shaped with painstaking attention to aerodynamics, tested extensively to reduce drag and allow the car to reach speeds approaching 120 miles per hour, an almost unbelievable figure for a full four-seat luxury car in 1952. Underneath, the R-Type shared its 4.6L, later enlarged, straight-six with other Bentleys of the era, but received a higher state of tune along with a taller final drive ratio designed specifically to maximize high-speed cruising ability on the newly emerging European motorway network. Owners could genuinely drive from London to the south of France in a single day, arriving in complete comfort, a genuinely revolutionary proposition at the time. Fewer than 210 examples were built, making the R-Type Continental extraordinarily rare even by the standards of hand-built 1950s British cars. At auction today, well-preserved examples with original coachwork routinely sell for £750,000 to over £1.5 million, with exceptional cars occasionally exceeding £2 million, reflecting its status as one of the most important and desirable British cars of the entire post-war era. Rolls-Royce Phantom IV. If any car represents the absolute pinnacle of British automotive exclusivity in the 1950s, it is the Rolls-Royce Phantom IV, a car so expensive and so restricted that Rolls-Royce refused to sell it to the general public at all. Produced between 1950 and 1956, only 18 examples were ever built, and every single one was reserved exclusively for heads of state and members of royal families at Rolls-Royce's own discretion. There was, quite deliberately, no advertised price for the Phantom IV because it was never actually offered for sale in the conventional sense. Instead, Rolls-Royce built each car individually to the exact specification of its intended owner, including Princess Elizabeth, later Queen Elizabeth II, General Francisco Franco of Spain, and the Shah of Iran, with costs understood to have run into many tens of thousands of pounds once bespoke coachwork, armor plating in some cases, and custom fittings were factored in. Mechanically, the Phantom IV was unusual even among Rolls-Royces, powered by a straight-8 engine rather than the marque's typical straight-6, a configuration chosen specifically for its smoothness at the low, stately speeds appropriate for ceremonial use. The chassis alone weighed as much as an entire ordinary family car, built to support enormous, heavily armored coachwork in some cases. Because so few were built, and because most remain in the hands of royal households, museums, or state collections to this day, the Phantom IV essentially never appears on the open market. On the rare occasions that ownership has changed hands privately, values have been reported in the range of £5 million to £8 million, making it, quite literally, one of the rarest and most expensive cars Britain has ever produced. Jaguar D-Type. The Jaguar D-Type is, without much argument, one of the most significant racing cars Britain has ever produced. A car built with a singular purpose: to win at Le Mans and to do so repeatedly. It succeeded spectacularly, taking overall victory in 1955, 1956 and 1957, cementing Jaguar's reputation as a manufacturer capable of beating far larger, better-funded rivals from Italy and Germany. While the D-Type was never sold as a conventional road car in the way the later XKSS was, a limited number of customer examples were made available to serious privateer racing teams throughout the mid-1950s, at prices that ran into the thousands of pounds, an enormous sum for what was, in essence, a purpose-built racing machine with minimal creature comforts. Its aerodynamic aluminum monocoque construction, highly unusual for the era, was borrowed directly from aircraft design principles, reflecting Jaguar's use of aviation industry techniques and materials. Power came from the same evolving 3.4L straight-6 found across Jaguar's competition cars of the period, eventually producing well over 250 brake horsepower in its most developed racing form, allowing the D-Type to reach speeds of nearly 175 miles per hour down the Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans, figures that stunned rival manufacturers throughout the mid-1950s. Today, original works D-Types with genuine Le Mans history are among the most valuable racing cars in the world, full stop, not just among British cars. Recent auction results have placed well-provenanced examples at well over £15 million with truly exceptional works cars, those that actually finished on the podium at Le Mans occasionally exceeding £20 million when they do very rarely come up for sale. Aston Martin DBR1. Topping this list is a car that has, at various points, held the outright record for the most expensive British car ever sold at auction, the Aston Martin DBR1. Built between 1956 and 1959 with only 5 examples ever constructed, the DBR1 was Aston Martin's ultimate sports racing car of the decade, developed under chief engineer Ted Cutting with a singular goal: to win the World Sports Car Championship and, above all, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. That goal was achieved emphatically in 1959 when a DBR1 driven by Carroll Shelby and Roy Salvadori took overall victory at Le Mans, while a sister car secured Aston Martin the World Sports Car Championship in the same year, the high point of the marque's entire competition history. The car that achieved this feat was piloted throughout the decade by some of the greatest drivers of the era, including Sir Stirling Moss, who also took a DBR1 to victory at the 1959 Nürburgring 1,000 kilometers. Under the bonnet sat a 2.9 to 3.0 L inline-6 engine, eventually producing around 250 to 264 brake horsepower, mounted in a lightweight tubular space frame chassis clothed in a strikingly elegant aluminum body, a design so admired that one surviving example was even awarded the most elegant sports car trophy at the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance decades later in 2001. Built with no safety systems, no power steering, and no driver aids of any kind, the DBR1 demanded total commitment from anyone brave enough to drive it at its limit. Given that only 5 were ever built and each carries a documented history intertwined with some of motorsport's most celebrated names, the DBR1 has become the ultimate trophy for serious collectors of British automotive history. In 2017, one example sold at auction for a staggering $22.5 million, equivalent to roughly £17.5 million, officially making it, at the time, the most expensive British car ever sold, surpassing even the record previously held by a Le Mans winning Jaguar D-Type. It remains, to this day, one of the definitive answers to the question of just how far British engineering, craftsmanship, and racing ambition could be pushed during motoring's most romantic decade. What ties every car on this list together isn't just the size of the price tag, whether in 1950s pounds or in today's eye-watering auction estimates. It's the sheer audacity of British engineering and craftsmanship during a decade when the country was still recovering from the devastation of the Second World War. While rationing lingered and the average family saved for years to afford a modest saloon, a small number of factories in Coventry, Crewe and Newport Pagnell were quietly producing some of the most technically ambitious, beautifully hand-finished, and competitively dominant cars the world had ever seen. From the silent, coach-built grandeur of the Rolls-Royce Phantom IV, a car so exclusive it was never even offered for public sale, to the raw, race-bred aggression of the Aston Martin DBR1, these 10 cars represent the absolute extremes of what British manufacturing was capable of during the 1950s. Many of them remain, to this day, among the most valuable cars on the planet, proof that genuine engineering excellence and hand craftsmanship never really go out of fashion. They may have been extraordinarily expensive when new, and they are, in many cases, close to priceless today, but for the handful of people who could once afford them, and the even smaller handful who can afford them now, these cars represent something money alone can't quite capture. A golden, unrepeatable moment in British automotive history.